Good morning, everybody. Well, it's not often that I look back at the past videos. I do sometimes. I'll put together montages of previous videos, but it's always you guys who find the nuggets in terms of the past things that we've said that relate to our current reality. Now, as we all know, the serpent has crowned himself, and the Sharona Lie-rus, we're going to start calling it, has everything to do with his coronation. He rules this reality. And we're going to open today's show with a video that one of you found. So a vintage Enterthestars video from 2017, years before the spamdemic, in which we mention the Sharona crowning of the serpent. Now, I'm going to only play part of this video, but listen to this. This is nuts. This is the S8 configuration of the sulfur molecule. And as I was scrolling down, I said, this looks a lot like a crown. And whose crown might this be? And when I got to this image, it confirmed that it looks like a crown because they call it a crown ring. This is the S8 stable molecule of sulfur that is an anti-prism. And what you're looking at is the as above, so below. Sulfur, the crown of the devil. King on earth for a while. So you see, not only does the cube anti-prism contain the 44, but it also contains the 88, which is why Obama was from the 88th parallel, Chicago. He was the one who brought this tower to bear, opening under his presidency. So you see, nothing is by accident. So that was from 2017, talking about the crowning of the serpent. Now, of course, information like this is a gift of the Holy Spirit. I'm not trying to brag about anything here about this, because none of this comes as a result of any kind of intelligence we have. It's all through the Holy Spirit. But the context of that video was we were trying to warn people about the coming crowning of the serpent, and we were decoding the One World Trade Center anti-prism design, which looked like a crown, and we were talking about the crowning serpent, and that the world would change forever. And sure enough, 2 years later, the world did change under the Sharona crown. So let's get into some of this predictive programming here that is going on with a different show, which is from the show Sanctuary. Now, I never really get tired of doing these kinds of decodes because these things are like gold nuggets waiting to be discovered, right? And gold nuggets of truth. And each nugget that we uncover wakes up more and more people because they begin to see the continuity of the message between all these different TV series, and it helps them to wake up. They see how meticulously all of this is woven together to brainwash the minds of millions of people who watch these TV shows, and also preparing their minds subliminally for future agendas. And that's why we do these television decodes, to help wake people up. So this particular one is from Sanctuary. Now, I uploaded a montage of this several days ago. This is what we're going to cover today. And Sanctuary is a 2008 TV series about a doctor who protects and provides sanctuary for a race of genetic anomalies in the human genome. Many of them are human-like. Some of them are animalistic, I guess, but they're basically sentient beings. This woman discovers that they exist, and that many of them are in hiding because, of course, they don't fit into the rest of humanity. And she provides sanctuary in plain sight. Now,
of course, with most of these series, there's a spamdemic element to this series, and that's what we're going to cover today. So, about the end of season 1 in 2008, it might have been 2009, a Lie-ruse is released by the bad guys that causes the abnormals, which are the genetic anomalies, right, to basically turn into zombies. And the Lie-ruse is called Lazarus. And according to the series, it's activated best in extremely cold climates. Does this remind you of anything? So, in the Doctor's encounters with these abnormal beings, when she basically comes across their, she realizes that the vampire body fluid, can't say the word anymore on YouTube, BLOOD, the vampire body fluid is actually what helps to extend life and give them superpowers. So she comes across this in her studies and in her encounters with these abnormal beings. And for some reason, she has to inject herself with it, I think to save her life or something like that. And it causes her to live for a very long time. So they surmise that the only cure for the Lazarus Lie-ruse is this vampire red body fluid, vampire plasma, right? So does that remind you of anything? Well, we had the whole convalescent plasma treatment, remember? So as we navigate these clips, I want you to watch and listen to how specific the series gets compared to what is going on in our reality right now.
Able to procure a very rare sample of ancient, untainted vampire blood. After each of us was injected, we received unique gifts as a result. Blood that supposedly possessed miraculous properties.
So they possess these miraculous properties. They extend life, as you just heard him say, and it's the vampire BLOOD.
Tesla's reaction was the most dramatic.
What we need to find out is whether this was a naturally occurring phenomenon or something that was intentionally released.
Now, this is the Doctor. Of course, this is played by the woman who was in Stargate SG-1. She was one of the scientists in that series, which was all about serpents and chests and spirit possession and all that, right? So, this goes on. Watch.
Given the cold climate. It seems unlikely, but certainly a pathogen could be involved.
So this pathogen thrives in cold climates. It's actually released in the Yukon by a drone, and it spreads right around a particular place called White Horse. Watch.
Viruses have been known to cause mass psychosis.
Now, what's so significant about White Horse? Well, in previous decodes that we'd done, we revealed that this was the place where the Thump family fortune began, on the backs of women who got money for their bodies. Now, this is an actual newspaper advertisement from the era. I think this was in the early 1900s. This is the hotel and restaurant owned by Fred Thump, and it was in White Horse, and this is where it all began. These are the roots of the real estate empire, and this is history. This is known history. It's just not talked about very much if you dig back through here. Now remember the timeline for this series, 2008. Before there was a President Thump, before there was a crap scene, before all of it.
And I will not stand idly by while the cabal imposes its chaos. The war has begun. Humans versus abnormals.
So, of course, it's the cabal, so they're revealing the truth about this, okay? And understand the cabal has some very specific plans, all right? First, they tried to get us all to admit and concede that the world was overpopulated. Okay, that was their first attempt, because it's way easier to depopulate the planet by trying to convince everyone just not to have as many children, or that, let's try that first. That's what they did. So that's the easiest way to do it. And understand that this has nothing to do with the planet and climate change. This has everything to do with biblical prophecy. This has everything to do with them waging war on God. That's what this has to do with, this depopulation thing. Now, how would that work? Well, they are seeking to change times and laws. And that brings me to another point before we move on with this conversation. Sometimes I'm hearing chatter, going on right now in the community about our channel, that we don't open the Bible enough. Well, understand, if you're listening carefully, we're talking about the Bible throughout every single one of these decodes, because this has everything to do with the Bible. I think we've been programmed to believe that if a person isn't going chapter and verse through the actual Bible, that they're not talking about the Bible. Well, we just talked about seeking to change times and laws. That's a biblical passage in the Bible. And just because I don't know the chapter and verse, then that puts the onus on the people who listen and watch these decodes. If you want to further search that out and see how that applies to our current reality, then you should do that, right? So we do engage in Bible study. It's just a different form of Bible study. But we've been convinced and brainwashed that there's a paradigm to Bible study, which is someone going chapter and verse through the Bible. Well, that's what the enemy wants, because then you lose people, because you're not seeing how those Bible verses connect to our current reality, which are, in this case, media entertainment, and how the enemy, in bringing that forward to the current state of the world and showing people how that relates exactly to what's going on right now. If we leave this part out, then you're just reading the Bible and not making the connections to what's going on right now. So how is the enemy trying to seek to change times and laws? Well, by waging war on the flesh, right? The seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. He's trying to eat the dust of the woman, bruising her in the heel, her bruising him in the head. The war on flesh. Now, at the end of time, God even says in the Bible that had I not cut those days short, there would be no flesh left. Okay, another verse from the Bible. You can look that up. So that relates directly to the war on flesh of the serpent. Okay, now some subscribers, and I really appreciate when you do this, Rebecca does this often. She will put the chapters and verses that I reference in the decodes in the comment section. So if you see her comments, usually those are verses that have been mentioned in the show or apply directly to what we're talking about. So there's your Bible study right there. And this, I believe, is the most effective kind of Bible study, because it's one thing to have a pastor get up in front of a group of people and talk about Bible verses and maybe mention a few things that generally apply to the Bible verse. But it's a whole different thing when you're showing it happening real time and showing the enemy basically programming his agenda into entertainment media. That's a whole nother level of Bible study. So I just want to softly rebuke those criticisms that are coming into the community. Let's keep watching.
How far is this dispersion expected to spread?
Abnormals in the path of the agent are showing rapid onset of clinical paranoia and extreme aggression.
The reaction to the abnormal uprising is exactly what we hope for. Anger, scapegoating, retribution, that's your real vector of transmission.
So you just heard them spell it out right in plain sight. The paranoia, aggression, okay? About the infection is the chaos magic that they're hoping for. And this is all happening right now, which is why we always have to remain calm. She mentioned scapegoating, retribution. We can't let ourselves get sucked into their chaos magic. It plays right in to their plan, which is what she just said here.
Oxidized bronze.
Now, There's a lot of historical characters that emerge in the series, and they're made immortal by the vampire serum. There's Tesla. Tesla's in here, as you heard it mentioned earlier in the decode here. They mentioned Tesla. This is Watson here. And in this scene, before he enters the door, he tests the oxidation on a copper door knocker. How does he do it? He scratches it with his fingernail. And they call that like an oxidation or a patina. And we've talked all about the copper, haven't we? Copper represents the serpent. Copper is Nakasheth, and the serpent is Nakash. They're almost the same Hebrew word. It's unclean. And in this case, Watson wants to make sure that the door knocker wasn't a reproduction. Now, I want you to listen to this dialogue here, because this is all doublespeak. And I'll explain to you what he's really saying here about this copper door knocker.
Door knocker.
To test its age.
Reproductions are rampant. I would have been so disappointed. Reproductions are rampant. I would have been so disappointed.
So, what is he really saying here in this doublespeak? Well, based on our research, the serpent will somehow use copper to taint reproduction. Now, if you think that's far out, understand that we already know that copper put inside of the womb prevents pregnancy. It's called the copper IUD, right? He said reproductions are rampant. What that is code for is reproduction is rampant. Reproduction is rampant. So copper prevents that. So what is he really saying here? This is about depopulation, isn't it? It's not just about the copper IUD. There's something else to this copper and fertility thing. And I believe the whole scratching of this door knocker here has something to do with the infection. Okay, he scratches it with his fingernail. It's almost like the bite of the serpent.
To test its age.
Reproductions are rampant. I would have been so disappointed. Reproductions are rampant. I would have been so disappointed.
Anyone with the DNA of our kind could suddenly be stricken with psychotic aggression.
Now, here's where things get very specific, because they show the spread of Lazarus. Remember the Lazarus? And it matches almost exactly how VidCode 19 spread, going from China to the Pacific Northwest. Now, this map shows it spreading through Alaska and the Yukon. Okay, but I'm not quite sure, because if you think about it, coming from China, was it really spread through the air? Possibly. Is this what this is telling us here? I don't know. But the first cases in America were up here in the Pacific Northwest. So how would they know that? How does that happen? And they talk about air travel and it coming through the air and being spread that way. So maybe this is the real truth about how this began and spread. Unbelievable. Now, let me make sure you guys are still with me here before we keep going on with this decode. I appreciate everybody coming out today. Let's get into this some more here. So here's the map. Here's where it all started. January of 2020. Started up in Washington State and began to move across that direction. They even call it a breakout data compilation. Reminds you of the map, the Hopkins map, doesn't it?
I'll be looking at my own blood as a way to combat the disease. A man-made pathogen.
Psychosis-inducing agent that affects only abnormals has to be by design.
John believes the Cabal is behind it.
It's really hard to know how this sucker works. So much chop, so little suey.
So that is a direct reference to China, obviously, chop and suey. And we saw the spread of it through the air coming over from China. So that's probably what this is about.
So much chop, so little suey. So much chop, so little suey.
But you think Cryo was involved?
Well, it looks like the bioagent was cooled way down before being vaporized.
So it thrives in these cold environments. And again, that is exactly what they told us about the crap scene, that it would, they had to store to these ultra cold temperatures.
Given the cold climate,
Dispersal device of sufficient size could well blanket the globe.
First dispersal was a test, a dry run, I'm certain of that.
to measure the effectiveness of what I'm beginning to think is some sort of neurotoxin.
So the first time was a test. Now this, it doesn't, I don't want to say the word concern because we're not supposed to live in a state of fear, but if they've got future plans and this was all just a test, then we got to prepare for that, right? Mentally and spiritually. All right. Now they mentioned neurotoxin, of course, and we know that some people who got the Pokemon sticker are coming down with these neurological effects, like zombie-like effects, paralysis and things like this.
The rogue protein found in mad cow disease
Replicates inside the abnormal's brain, causing deeply pathological aggression.
Now here they talk about prions and mad cow and an extended, slow, incurable death, but that somehow the controllers have immunity.
We're looking at one of the most dangerous pathogens the abnormal world has ever seen. It functions very much like a prion on steroids, and eventually a very painful death.
But according to the tests, we can say with certainty that the mode of transmission is not person to person. It's not communicable.
The fact is, prion disease is largely incurable. I still think our best hope is to find something in our own blood, possibly an antigen that could inhibit the disease.
So this is weird. It's pretty specific, isn't it? And we just covered prions. We did a full show on prions and different wasting diseases in the animal population, right? These misfolded proteins, all right? So it'll be interesting to see if all of this links into what is happening right now.
Well, you got to believe that they built an immunity into their design.
No. They knew it would be possible to immunize after the fact.
So this is weird because here you see what could be a Sharona protein spike. Now, of course, maybe it isn't. We have to concede that. I learned a lot after listening to the bickering going on in the truth community, that sometimes we say matter-of-fact things that we should be careful about how we say them without substantial proof, okay? And I'm trying to be better about that, okay? The symbolism we cover doesn't prove anything, but we're making a case of the possibilities of what this is. And this is why sometimes people go, you know what? Why don't you make these shows go faster? Why are you getting into this nitty-gritty detail? Because the more parts of the evidence you could put together, then you begin to realize and see the bigger picture. It becomes a better case for the pre-programming. But to just grab a few things here and there and not take my time to really show the level of detail that these people go to in their script, I would be doing all of us a disservice, because then we would be accused of character assassination and things like that. I want you to understand that this is happening on a spiritual level. Okay. That to me looks like it could be the sun. I admit that, but look at the context of everything we're looking at in this series. They're talking very specifically about a Lie-rus, right? Let's keep watching.
Yeah, she said the power was passed on for a reason. First to her and then to me. I've never wrapped my head around it.
I spend weeks more traveling the earth, disseminating it to the affected abnormals.
Now, here to me is the slam dunk, because Tesla comes up with a crap scene, but the only one of the abnormals who won't take it is Bigfoot. He resists the crap scene. He becomes a crap scene hesitant individual. He says it goes against his morals. What's really going on here? Well, let's listen first, and I'll tell you my thoughts on what the programming is here. Now, also understand that Tesla is explaining all this in a library. And I've told you before that humanity is like a library. We're all books in the shelves, right? We were born in the garden amongst the trees of the garden. And now we've been folded into a book, which is a prison cube. And we don't get out until we go through the narrow gate back to Jesus, right? The gate is narrow.
Effectively stemming an outbreak, I have spent weeks creating a working treatment for the Lazarus virus. And in the end, the creep in the room with the hair doesn't want to take his medicine.
You know what I'm going to ask? Come on, seriously. Who cares if that cure was cooked up by a world-class jerk? Stuff works.
Who cares if the cure was cooked up by world-class jerks? There's some programming right there for you. Very specific.
If that cure was cooked up by a world-class jerk, stuff works.
Does your
The stuff works. Now, understand that my feelings on this are that they view us as the apes, the unascended man. Okay? We are the pure seed, unwilling to mix with the serpent if given a choice. So they lock Bigfoot up because he decides to stand on principle. And he explains, you're going to hear Bigfoot explain that if he takes the human-made cure, his people will disown him and that he won't betray who he is. Listen carefully.
Room with the hair doesn't want to take his medicine.
You know what I'm going to ask? Come on, seriously. Who cares if that cure was cooked up by a world-class jerk? Stuff works.
Does your hirsute friend understand that he's facing probably the most unpleasant, slow-lingering death in all creation?
I have to keep you locked up. Holistic cures aren't working. I have to keep you locked up.
We're going to have to keep you locked up. The holistic cures are not working.
I will not take this treatment.
I will not take this treatment.
No.
Your holistic cures aren't working.
If I ingest this human-made cure.
If I ingest this human-made cure.
My people will
disown you. I know.
My people will disown me.
But can you...
I will not betray who I am.
You'd rather die like a diseased psychotic animal instead? Yeah. That's great. I get that.
Now, I understand that symbolism is not a finite thing, but that was pretty specific. And this is the argument for continuing to look at the symbolism. But also, these things have to be backed up with facts, right? We already have heard them with their own voice tell us that they believe that our world is overpopulated, that they believe that we're affecting the climate and that we have to do something about it. And a large part of that has to do with, not having so much population. This is what we've heard them say. So I don't want to discourage people from looking at the programming and looking at, the symbolism, because it is just as important. Both are important. We need people in the community that both look at the facts behind it, and some of us are better at that, and others of us have eyes to see the symbolism behind it. So I just want to encourage the community right now, because there's some division going on and fighting. And it's really hard to see. It's really hard. And it makes me very sad. Okay. The last people we should be turning on are the people in our own community. All right. Now, outsiders, that's a different thing. And even then, we got to be careful. Okay. You can't just say things about somebody without having some kind of proof to back it up. All right. So now, obviously, what we just saw with Bigfoot and all that, that was some role reversal. There was some role reversal going on here, but we can still piece together the story, even when they flip the roles around. They do that just to put enough, what's the word I'm looking for? Just so you can't connect the dots quite good enough to make a case for the pre-programming. So they once remove things a few times to make sure that it's not too obvious in the script that they're pre-programming us for future events. So I just wanted to leave you with that as well. So that's what's going on with that. Let's go into the chat with you guys. Nancy's at the store. Cool, Nancy. Prove all things. Thessalonians 5:21. Yes, Tom. We need film producers to produce positive things. Unfortunately, the problem that I've seen in Hollywood is that it is completely overrun. And I don't know if this has been from the beginning, but it's completely been overrun. And how can I say that with confidence? Well, we have a full library of evidence on this channel showing the pre-programming in almost every single production of any note, of any value. Anything seen by tens of thousands or millions of people pretty much it has the sole purpose of pre-programming. Now, in the beginning, when I started decoding this stuff, I didn't know that to be the case because I hadn't seen the continuity between all of these different TV shows and episodes. But then I start seeing these familiar scenes. They're like memes. They're memes, scenes, messaging, things that should not be there, like crowns and things like this. Or the same Lie-ruses story over and over and over again. And so this is where I finally come to the point where and I'm not just saying that to slander all of Hollywood, but, we have to look at the facts here and what we've been able to see over the course of the 9 years that we've been decoding and looking at films. It all seems to be controlled by one single author, and that's the devil himself. Trying to soften the target, trying to get us to accept the agenda. And unfortunately, some people can't see that very clearly, and they lean more on facts. That doesn't make those people bad. It just means that they have maybe some more learning to do, or maybe they're just not into that, or maybe their brain isn't wired that way. But our brain, obviously, when you come to our channel, the connections are undeniable. And that's why if you look at the videos, most of our videos, 95% of them, sit at a 99% approval rating in the ratings. And that's because people get it. They understand that this isn't a stretch. Because if it was a stretch, the approval ratings would be far, far, far lower, wouldn't they? Wouldn't they? And I believe even the people that are thumbing down the videos, I think that because it's the same people thumbing down the videos over and over again. It would be different if it fluctuated from video to video based on how people felt about the connections, but that's not the case. It's the same 8 or 10 people that thumbs down the video, and oftentimes they're thumbsing it down before the video has even gone live or been published. So I think that is probably manufactured. It's fake. So that's what's going on, you guys. That's the update. Let's go into the chat a little bit here. Obama runs Netflix now. That's what I heard. Thanks, John. And you guys don't change either. You guys are the most amazing subscribers on YouTube. I know I don't say that enough, but you guys really, really are. People put more trust in strangers and media on TV than their own family. Yes, Life in the Shack. Absolutely. Thanks, Angelina. Thanks, Sanja. Sanja, I saw your membership up here. I really appreciate that. Much love to you for that. Thanks, Troy, Catherine, Nancy, Isaac. Maybe Scratch and Sniff, says Isaac. Says he's probably referring to the door knocker. That's possible. Okay. Yeah, it's got to be AI robots. That's what I'm thinking. Got to have something to do with that. Jesus Christ will return to judge the world in righteousness. Yep. Now, I don't want to belabor the point, but we all know the answer to all of this, and that is the gospel. I think sometimes once you understand and hear the gospel and accept it, like all of us have on this channel, or most of us, then we sometimes forget, right? We get wrapped up in this stuff and we forget that other people need to hear the gospel. And maybe I'm not as good at repeating that over and over again, but I like to provide the proof for people to accept the gospel as well. Not that the gospel needs proof, but people have to experience this world before they even know what the gospel is and how it can help them to get out of this world. If people are living in rose-colored glasses and don't think there's a problem in the world, then they don't need saving, right? And what did Jesus do? He showed people that they needed saving because he showed all the sin in the world. He healed people from the evil reality, all their ailments caused by the world of sin we live in. He showed how insidious sin is by rebuking the Pharisees. So in other words, it was a double message. It was a message of the sin in the world and why you need saving. Because if you don't think you need saving, then how are you going to accept the gospel? So absolutely, the gospel is the only thing that saves you from this reality. So I want to encourage those of you who have not accepted your Lord and Savior to do so. All you have to do is open your Bible and go to the gospel. The internet makes it easy because you could just search gospel and it will tell you all the verses you need to read. All right. So I wanted to set the record straight on that as well. You know, there's a lot of finger pointers in our community right now. It's a little bit unsettling. And I hate to even have to cover, you know, and set the record straight. But when you're out there on other channels and you leave a comment, immediately it's almost like someone's following you around. I left a comment on Brian's channel the other day, and someone their comment was full of all lies. It was all lies about our channel. And I was like, is that what people think about our channel? They think we're false teachers? Haven't we always told people that Christ is the only way? And there were like 5 other lies that the person said. And I'm like, wow. And people reading that comment are going to believe that until I set the record straight. So I set the record straight in the comment. And of course, the person didn't come back. They said, we taught astrology. We don't teach astrology here. We condemn astrology. You don't live your life by the stars. But it's really easy for people to throw out accusations. And so every once in a while, I have to set the record straight in case there's anybody new that comes to the channel who's out there in the truth community reading comments and they see people slandering our channel. A lot of slandering going on, isn't there? So I want to encourage you guys that, you know, we're going to get through this, you know, and we have to try to maintain a level of integrity on this channel. And I'm not perfect. I've been in my little bouts with people. Notice that hasn't happened very much lately in a long time because I don't like to get involved in all that does is stir the pot and get the community divided. We're already divided. After this whole letter that shall not be named thing happened, that is when I realized that a lot of this infighting and dissent is manufactured. It's created. And I'm going to say a few words about this before we move on and end the show, because I think this is important to understand that the way that YouTube has set up everything here, it breeds dissent and jealousy and anger. Okay. It's set up to do that. So understand that you have to be careful and not give into this. And I'm talking to other channels out there because YouTube breeds this. You know, we all get up every single day and all we think about is reaching out to you guys and exposing the enemy. And when YouTube starts taking away that ability, starts standing in the way of it, when they start picking and choosing winners and losers with their algos, when they make some of us have to change the way we speak, when they give some people join buttons and others they don't, when they give certain channels check marks and others they don't, it can breed division. It can cause jealousy. And if you don't have the full armor of God and you're not in the right place in your heart and mind, it can cause you to be very angry and jealous. Understand that it has nothing to do with the quality of your channel. It has everything to do about how YouTube has it set up. Some of it's random because they just go after who they can go after, but others are specific. In other words, they pick people who they know can steer the community a certain way that they want it to go, which is division. Why do you think the whole letter that shall not be named community was allowed to take off the way they did on YouTube? They wanted that to happen, to divide the community. And what happened? A lot of people got really angry about that. They're like, how did that channel get 200,000 subscribers in a year or 6 months? You know, and look, a long time ago, I had to check my ego at the door because we work really hard here, don't we? And I was like, there was a period of time where I was angry a little bit. And I was like, how are all my peers thriving and reaching so many people with their message, and our message isn't getting out there? And then God was like, you know what? You need to stop that. And I was like, okay. He goes, the people that you need to reach are being reached. And it does no good to think that just because someone reached a certain level that they're bad, or just because someone's selling a t-shirt, they're bad. And I let it go. Now, you notice we don't load up this channel with any kind of things anymore. That was another thing a person mentioned. Oh, are you going to start selling meat again? We haven't had meat on this channel in 5 or 6 years. That was organic grass-fed beef to help people to eat healthier so they have an alternative to still eat meat without buying it in the store where they're doing bad things to animals, right? But when you see that in a comment, it just sounds tacky. So I had to set the record straight. Like, we haven't sold meat in 5 or 6 years. And how much meat did we sell? Almost nothing, because our channel was a lot smaller. You see? So God also rebuked me, and he said, you know what? You need to streamline your channel. You don't need sponsors. You don't need to sell anything on your channel. And it really makes God a little bit uncomfortable when you're selling things on your channel, when you're talking about spiritual things. That's what he told me. Now, I'm not saying that applies to everyone else, but for me, it just gave me a dirty feeling. And I know that some people justify it and they say, you know what, Casey, you have to make a living too. And you work really hard, but you know what? I don't need it. And that's why when people ask me, why don't you sell t-shirts? No, we did. There was a time when we did. And notice none of that stuff's on here anymore. And God just said, you know what? Be careful what you say. Stay in the ring. Well, that's a bad analogy. Stay on, stay there, because this is what we need. We need you to be out here spreading the message of truth. You're no good to the Most High if you don't have a voice to speak with, right? You're no good to him. So that's what we're doing. And so far it's worked. And there is no jealousy about, oh, that person's selling thousands of dollars a month in t-shirts. We could care less, because we're here on our own mission. We're here on our own mission for God, to reach as many people as possible, show them the pre-programming and the other things we do. We read between the headlines, of course. And people need that to feel sane again. Because doesn't it make you feel insane when you read these headlines and you see the agenda and where things are headed? And you need to basically understand the reasons behind why they're doing certain messaging. And that helps us be grounded, doesn't it? So that's what we're going to do tomorrow. We're going to read between some more headlines. I got only a few pulled up so far, but I'll go through and see what else there is that applies to what we're going through right now. There was some guy dressed as a Joker on a Tokyo train who was hurting people. Crazy, crazy guy. So there's a lot to cover. So What else do we have here? I know some of you would love an Enterthestars t-shirt, but unfortunately, I just explained why we don't do that anymore. It just sends a weird message, and it's fodder for the critics, okay? That's the most important thing. We have to stand above reproach, don't we? I made a lot of changes in my life recently to just try to be a better person, you know? And we want to be above reproach, because here's the first thing that people will criticize the channel for. Oh, look at that guy. He's selling all this stuff. Is this about the truth, or is this about making money? I don't want anyone to ever say that about our channel. Ever. Because that's immediately is going to disenfranchise certain people. I don't want to be a televangelist. It's not why we're here. Okay? Now, there's also a fine line, because God gives me the things that I need. I'm not rich. I make far less money than I ever did in any career that I was in. But guess what? I'm taken care of and I'm okay. And so that's all God promises, right? That's all he promises. And that should be enough for anybody. We don't all have to be the number one, truther. I don't even like using that word anymore. We are nonconformists. That's probably a better word. A nonconformist, which infers that we are free thinking, that we don't just accept the way we're told to think. I think that's a better description of our community. Not a truther, because that now has a negative connotation. Right? These aren't theories. These are long, well thought out belief systems based on the truth, based on the Bible, based on biblical prophecy, based on observations in the world. You'll also notice we don't just jump on to the latest theories out there either. We try to give it some time to think about it, pray about it, and see if it is the truth, because you don't want to just jump on the next theory that's out there. And I know some channels do that. I don't think it's particularly smart, even though you can get hundreds of thousands of views by jumping on the next theory. Okay? But that's their prerogative, right? It's their prerogative. So, what else do we have here? Yes, the enemy is working overtime, Rita. We don't fit into any box here, says Rachel. I agree 100%. Absolutely. I don't check any of their boxes, and I don't think most of you do either. Now, we also have some updates on what's going on in Australia. That'll be on tomorrow's show. All right. Tam Tam's a puzzle solver. 7 Grade says, look at sulfur molecule on right ring at the Expo 2020 Dubai. Oh, wow. Seems very similar. Are you going to cover that on your channel, 7 Grains? Because we should watch that. Yeah, that sulfur molecule discovery was crazy. The anti-prism. It's an anti-prism. It's a crown. It's also the Wonder Woman logo. What does that tell you? And it's also the descriptive name of the One World Freedom Tower. It's an anti-prism. It's the crown sulfur molecule. And of course, what was rained down from heaven, Sodom and Gomorrah? Sulfur. So it's basically, the tower is a big defiance straight up into the sky toward the Most High. That's what it is. Spirit, with spiritual eyes anyways. So I think green is poople. Why would they censor that comment? That's weird. Hardy har. That's not a bad comment. What, we can't put poop symbols in our comments anymore? I mean, this is getting crazy. Now, notice I didn't say the word BLOOD. Well, I watch hunting channels and they don't say the word either. They don't show it. YouTube's all sensitive to that. Oh, you can show all the fake BLOOD you want, as if there's a difference. Look at, they hid that one too. Jesus Christ is King. You can tell a lot by YouTube by the kinds of comments that they censor, right? Ambrose was taken down from Twitter. He's told the truth about the Lord. Yep. They're doing a lot of that too. Absolutely. So, I want to say one last time before we get off of here, if you feel like this live show lacked spiritual food, okay, go into the comments section and read all of the scriptures that some of the sisters and brothers put in the comment section that relate directly to what you just watched. That will help to tie up the loose ends and make it all make sense to you, because everything we're showing here is the enemy's, his program, his agenda, and where he's headed and how all this is going to play out in the last days. He has to tell us, because otherwise people would not accept the agenda. If we weren't already prepped and primed for his agenda, then he would get far less acceptance. So the only way that it makes sense to him is to show us and disclose it before it happens. Aside from the fact that he also wants to be like the Most High, and the Most High shows his prophets his plans. 7 grains is on our third strike. Yeah, be careful. So, thanks, Susan. All right, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and get off of here. I love each and every one of you. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Be safe, everybody.